Yes, thank you for DCAT. So now we're live to the town while we talk about the voting process, and our consultant, Dorothy Presser, has joined us on stage, and she provided some guidelines, I think, from the MASC in terms of a recommended process for going through the voting. And so I guess just by way of comment from what I see, number one, there's obviously a lot of very helpful language for specific motions and things that we need. But it seemed to me two decisions really jumped out that ought to be, we discuss publicly and let people know here's how we're going to do it. The first is it's pretty simple and straightforward. How many votes does it take for someone to get the position, or at least be offered the position? And we've always done things by a majority of the members present, and that would be my inclination. I assume that we're all going to be present, and so it would take 3 votes for any candidate to be appointed or be chosen. The other point that I thought was important to talk about, and involves more of a choice for us, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dorothy, there's 2 potential ways to go about the process. One is the ballot method, the other is the motion method. We would start in either method by discussing the candidates before a motion or a vote. With the ballot method, we all simply get to say who we would support. With the motion method, someone would make a motion to appoint X or to offer the position to X, and the language I know isn't what you provided. And then we would, a motion, a second, and a vote. So that understanding is correct in terms of, okay. Is there anything else before we have our discussion that you want to add to what we should be thinking about?
I get, one other thing is I know some of you have been busy doing reference checks. So it's at the beginning, usually what happens with the reference checks is at the beginning of the discussion, before you really get into the discussion, the people that did reference checks would take some time to share their information that they gained in doing the reference checks, which isn't, a verbatim, I talked to this person and they said this, but just sort of an overview of these are the people I spoke to, these are the things that came through. Maybe there's a quote along the way that you want to share or something along those lines, but generally that's where the discussion would start, and then you would move into, generally what I see is sometimes generally what I see is that someone will start off and say, I believe that this person is the strongest candidate, or I think that, I'm thinking about these 2 people, and these are, what I'm thinking about each of them. And then each person gets a chance to speak. At the end of that conversation, you might be clear to everybody who's going to be the person, and then you could move to your ballot or your motion. Or you might go around a second time after people have been able to hear what their colleagues thought, and maybe that helps them coalesce some of their own thinking.
Okay. So what I'm interested from my colleagues in sort of how you feel about the ballot method versus the motion method in a general sense.
I mean, we usually make a motion.
I'm sorry?
We usually make a motion.
We
so
do.
I guess I feel as though if that's what we normally do when we vote, why would we change that for this? But I also know we haven't voted for a superintendent in several years. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Is it kind of like a 50-50 what each kind of school committee does as far as that goes?
Yeah, I don't think there's any prevalent practice. I mean, it is kind of a different thing than your typical
regular vote, right?
Are we going to pass this policy?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other members, what do you think?
I'm fine with the motion vote. I would just recommend that we do unanimous vote if possible. I'd like to, or at least get some feedback on that and see if my colleagues agree with that versus a 3 and then done.
So so very often, if a motion does not get immediate unanimous support, someone will make a motion to revote, to make it a unanimous vote. So, and sort of the rationale behind that is letting whoever you're going to offer the job to know you didn't get support right away, but we're all going to support you when you come in. I mean, that's sort of the logic behind it.
What's the other district? Do they do the unanimous vote, or is it?
Again, to Robin's question, what happens, that's pretty common to follow, if it wasn't a unanimous vote the first time around, to sort of follow up and make it unanimous.
But other districts don't do a majority. They go to.
Oh, no, they would, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, 5 votes versus 3 votes.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is if it doesn't turn out to be unanimous the first time, there's often a revote. So the two, assuming it's 3-2, right? The two who were in the minority then say, I'll join the majority and make it a unanimous vote. So it's sort of a two-step. Am I making sense?
Maybe I'm not being clear. I guess.
You're hoping that everybody reaches the same decision.
I am, but
Yes.
but the way that Eric presented this before is he said that 3 people, if one candidate gets 3 votes, that would be our choice. But what I was proposing is if we did we would need to have 5 votes to make a candidate versus 3.
Let me comment if I could on that. So here's my thought, and Gabe and you others may have a different viewpoint, but this has been I think, a really good process to get 3 good candidates.
Strong, I'd say very strong.
Yeah.
Not even just good, that's strong.
But strong,
Yeah.
there you go. And who are, one of the reasons we moved the process a little quickly was because we think that these candidates may be attractive to other districts too. My concern, and I don't know that it would happen here, but imagine if, 4 people were for a particular person and the 5th vote dug their heels in. And we have taken the position that it's got to be 5-0. Or it's stuck 3-2. We could literally get into a position where we end up making no choice. And unless 2 people change their vote, for example. And what then? Do we go back through the entire process having lost the fall as an opportunity? That would be my concern, that you end up with no choice in a really competitive environment. Now, I recognize that's the worst case scenario, but that's my thought on the subject, and that's why I wouldn't support making the vote unanimous. I certainly think as a matter of process, if it's a 3-2 vote, hopefully the 2, as Dorothy said, would then say, well, I support, the position and we'll work with this, so-and-so, I think there are ways to handle that piece tactfully. But anyway, that's my thought. Gabe and Alice, I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Will say, as far as the interview process, like when we had the screening committee, it was by majority who we were initially going to bring in. And then as far as the finalists went forward, we again went by the majority. So if there was 12, so it was like.
It was 3/4 majority.
3/4,
wasn't it?
yes, because, yes.
Yeah.
So it didn't have to be unanimous.
Gotcha.
Just for some background.
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's us providing a conversation and a dialogue about each of the candidates that is only fair to them and fair to the community, for them to kind of hear and understand our feedback and kind of what's going on in the decision of who we think is the best candidate. So as long as there's an opportunity for us to do that, I'm okay with it being majority versus unanimous.
Okay. Gabe? Sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very important decision. At the core of it, I think a majority vote, I'll take a step back for a second. Having the discussion should cue each of us into what our thoughts are and where the vote will go. What what I fear with a majority vote, which is only a 3-person vote, is that a first motion, first person gets a majority, it's over type of scenario.
And that-
Is very concerning, given like the gravity of this decision. What I like about moving towards a majority is that even though we do have that discussion and we don't have a majority, it gives us an opportunity to potentially give everyone a vote, or, to Dorothy's point, to ask for a revote and the minority join the majority. You know, I don't know how comfortable I would be if the first person we put a motion on gets a 3-person vote and it's over.
It's entirely possible, and I know what you mean. The issue is do other candidates get enough consideration? Hopefully, if we have a vibrant discussion, which seems to be the plan, before we even talk about a motion to appoint someone, then every candidate will have had their moment, so to speak, and we'll talk about their strengths and what we see, and so we'll have an open and vibrant discussion about that. Everybody can be honest about how they feel, so everyone will be aired, so to speak, before we even take a motion. So I think that could obviate your concern.
I could live with that.
Okay. All
Can I
right.
just make one more little point?
Sure, please.
Is that, and I'm sure you all understand this anyway, but it's part of my little soapbox spiel, so.
Good, I'm going to ask you to pull the microphone just a little closer.
So and I'm sure you all understand this, but you're going to be talking about people publicly, and you're sort of holding their careers and their reputation in your hands. So we always advise that when you're talking about the different people, you're talking about the match of the person to the position, not people against each other. Right. Candidates against each other.
In terms of organizing the discussion, because I think we're all pretty aligned on the need for us to have this discussion, if we could do it in a way where we either do it alphabetically, but making sure that we are giving each of the candidates their time for a proper discussion, I think is.
True.
I think alphabetically makes sense.
So
Yeah,
I-
that's
I-
what we've done
Okay.
all along,
Yeah.
right, through the whole process.
Yeah.
So,
Wait, so when you alphabetically, like you mean each candidate?
like
Yeah,
last name,
like-
so for us, like it would be Bauer would be first, then Bruno, then Cushing. So it's, you do not like,
Yeah.
as we just discuss aloud.
Just for points of discussion.
Yeah, when we're sharing like reference stuff and just thoughts.
I'm trying to standardize it so that we're giving them equal time and discussion points, I guess.
Would it be possible for, if someone feels that, not necessarily in alphabetical order, or we could do that, but let's say hypothetically, I'm just going to speak hypothetically, Alice is in favor of Dan Bauer. And so we ask, does anyone feel, a specific candidate is one of their top choices and why? And kind of start that way, where we each go down and talk about.
So it goes by school committee member.
Yeah, because I feel like if we just highlight someone, I'm not saying that there's any negative comments that are going to be made, but I think forcing a committee member to speak of someone or on behalf of someone who they're not kind of considering in a top role may kind of cloud the conversation. What I'd love to hear is a conversation around, I feel a particular way about candidate A and their qualifications, but B is right there as well. And so this is kind of where I'm sitting, as opposed to taking my time to speak about candidate B, who may possibly be my third choice. And I don't think I'd be able to give them the attention they would deserve. I don't want to feel obligated to make a comment about every candidate. I want to focus on one, maybe two.
Well, I think it's only fair for us to know, though, that you feel that way about the candidate. So I think if we give you that platform to even share that, I think is what we're looking for in that discussion.
Right, but
Like, how will I know that if you don't abstain from providing feedback?
well, I think the dialogue should be, for example, Dr. Doherty, what are your thoughts on the candidates? Which do you feel? And we go in that order, as opposed to candidates, we just go down the line. and talk about who and why we feel would fit the role, and that will force us, and that will clue me in. Oh, right, Robin's candidate A and C, your candidate B and A. And I think that's the easiest way, and help me if I'm going in the right direction on this, but I think that's an easier way to do it than all of us talk about one candidate, and then by the time we're all done, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm going to know who or where we stand on a particular candidate.
But I also don't want that to sway someone. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I like the alphabetical idea.
I think the open dialogue in the format that I mentioned, I mean, that's the intention. It's not necessarily to sway, but it's for me to hear why you prefer someone. So it's not so much a swaying, it's what's your thought process on why someone's qualified and would fit within this district?
Okay.
And I think that's kind of, I want to give you my thought process on why I think a particular candidate is qualified and suitable for the district. And I think based on that, when we go to vote, there's no question what your position is, what yours is, et cetera.
Is that what you?
That's typically what I
okay.
see.
Okay, all right. So just talk it out. See.
Yeah, no, because I mean, again, it's not about swaying, it's about, do we have a consensus? Like, are we all there, and are we thinking about it in the right way? And I may be close, I may say, I could live with A or B.
Yeah, and I
know?
think it's definitely important too, if people are calling us or emailing us, to keep that in mind, and obviously the Google form that we can look at. So that's why I think as much information that we can receive from the community members, from those who have met any or all of the candidates, to really give us that, because there's only 5 of us voting, but we are representing the Danvers community and what the Danvers community wants. So I'm just begging the community to give us feedback. And I promise you it's anonymous. I don't know who the people are. I don't want to know.
All right, I think that makes sense. I don't think I'm hearing the consensus is do this by motion versus by ballot. All right, then that's the way we'll do it. And I think the discussion, we'll see if we can let it develop organically. We'll make sure that, do our best to make sure everybody gets, all the candidates that we talk about, the potential fit and the strengths and what we see, and they deserve that respect having gone through this process, which is, I'm sure, it's arduous to go through all of this, and we need to respect that. And I'm also hearing that the consensus is that we'll aim for a majority vote versus a unanimous vote, and we'll play it from there. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
All right. Anything that you want to add, Dorothy, to how we're doing here? Or- Okay.
No, it sounds like you've been thoughtful about it. So.
Okay. Anything anyone on the committee wants to add before Monday?
What's the procedure going to be? We're going to finish our with the last
the interview.
Yep.
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 and then we'll take a break, I'm assuming, and then we'll come back, and then we'll start our discussion.
Yeah, because we need time, to look at I want to be able to look at, you guys have time to look at the
Sure.
feedback, because I know a lot of us are coming right from work. So I want us to see,
And will the candidates be here?
No. Dorothy will call.
Okay.
Yeah, so once you make your unanimous vote, I will call the candidate and ask them if they are going to accept the position and come back to you and let you know. And I also get to call the other 2, so.
That's why we paid you to call the other 2.
Now, the one more thing we haven't talked about is that once we have a candidate, it's not quite a love match until we get the contract done. And I know in the past, we've appointed a subcommittee of the school committee to negotiate the contract with the new potential superintendent. I would like to see us do that again. My intention would be to appoint a subcommittee of us. And I'll announce that, once we have the vote. I know everybody probably wants to be on it.
How many are you looking for?
Two.
Two?
Because
Okay.
we can't do three, so we can only do two. And I wouldn't do one. I think it's best to have more voices than one. And so we'll go from there, but we'll announce that Monday night as well.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. All right. Dorothy, thank you again for all of your help during this process. It has been invaluable. We'll recommend you to all our friends. So, all right. Anything else from the committee?
Nope.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and good night, Danvers.